Okay, hi, my name is Dionne McCall, and this is my story.
Can you share with us how your journey with substance abuse began and evolved over time?
Sure. Um, I thought a lot about coming here today and the topic and sharing my experience. I thought about my grandparents. They were both alcoholics, and it was in the house a lot. And we came from a very poor background, very poor. Um, I remember, the details of how poor we were, how bread wasn't always available, how toilet tissue wasn't always available, but alcohol was available. Anyhow, I think about my grandparents and how they affected my mother. That's who raised me. And she came up with 10 brothers and sisters. And I am often amazed at how my grandmother did that with absolutely no money, as poor as the situation was with the 10 kids. I'm sure my grandmother had a miscarriage or two, as my mother was a younger woman with my dad. They never married. Um, she had a miscarriage or two. They lied to us and told us that it was the purple people eater. That's why the blood was in the bed. Okay. God was bringing all these things back to my remembrance as I was thinking about the content. And I said, okay. So, as a result of all that, as a young girl, I remember like around 6 or 7, my family played cards a lot. And they would have the little glasses, not the big ones, but the little glasses, and there would be a lot of them on the table, and they played a lot of pinochle. And so when we got on their nerves, they would tell us to have something to drink. It wasn't a suggestion, drink this and then go sit down, because we was making too much noise. And so there to me began my journey. I was often told as a young girl, because I was like the biggest in the class in the 8th grade. I developed early. My period came around 12, and I had breasts, and I was told that, are you old enough to make it to the bar? You look like you can make it and get us some beer or something sometimes. And so as they continued to tell me that over time, I felt like that's what I needed to do and become. Someone who could make it to the bar, who was old enough to hang out, who was liked by the older adults in my family because maybe, just maybe, I could make it to the bar. And so I went on with that, and I was a fast teenager. I want to say about the time I turned 13, I was in the 8th grade. I met a young man. And he was much older than me, 5 years older than me. And he smoked a lot of marijuana. And so I started my journey on smoking marijuana. By this time, I had already been exposed to cigarettes, Lucky Stripes, Camels, Pall Malls, terrible cigarettes. I don't know if y'all remember that, but anyhow, that started my journey with that young man. And I just went on to rush through my teenage years. I can remember wanting to rent a room at the age of 16. That's how much of a hurry I was to get out the house. I wanted to rent a room so that I could go there and do things that I couldn't do at home. So by the time I turned 17, I found a way to have my own place. And back then, apartments, studios, rooms were real cheap. And so I was able to get an apartment. And I started the downward spiral from there. It wasn't just the drugs, but the promiscuity. the freedom of having sex whenever I wanted to. So it wasn't just one thing, it was a combination of things. Because with the drugs came things for things. So I couldn't just have the drugs. I had, I didn't have a job. So I had to do things to get more drugs. And so my life progressed in that way. And the longer I used, the more different kinds of drugs I used. I was never an IV user. Thank God for that. But by the time I got 22, from the devastation of all the trauma that happened along the way, from, let's say, 6 years old to 22, that was like the biggest time in my life, with the most traumatic experience. And I started to spiral even more. And so 8 years after that, when I turned 30, by that time, I had really done a good job of messing my life up. So I wanted something different, and I felt like I was really at the end of the road. I remember I was a security guard, and I was making rounds in this college in Philadelphia, and it was a good job. It was in-house security. If anybody knows anything about that, they know that in-house is the best. Anyhow, I got that job. I met a man that helped me get that job, and I married that man. When I married him, I said to myself that he was going to fix me, that me marrying him was going to fix me and I wouldn't use as much. That's a lie. I still continue to use. And I used and I used, and I wouldn't go to work. I would get paid. And the next day I was broke. I would be at the job, 2 weeks to go, not a penny in my pocket, and just got paid. Don't know how I'm gonna make it back and forth to work. Don't know how I'm gonna get any more cigarettes or anything like that. And that pattern went on for a moment until I couldn't take it. And then I remember making the rounds one day after doing that kind of activity, spending all my money. I was making rounds this one time, and I went into the stall and I got on my knees and I said, God, I really, really don't want to live like this anymore. And that was the beginning of a bottom for me. I'm not going to say I stopped, I got up off my knees and everything was Gucci. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that I went on to be involved in a car accident. I ran into a telephone pole. I passed out behind the wheel. I don't remember the accident. I had a fifth underneath the seat. I had been up all night, and they had to use the jaws of life to get me out the car. The insidiousness of the disease of addiction. I'm in the hospital with a broken femur, and I'm on morphine, drip, and I'm on the phone calling the cop man, asking him to bring something up to the hospital while I'm on the drip. I would go on to get out the hospital and recover from that, and I would impose it on my mom to go get me some weed while I'm on these pain pills and trying to recover. And she did. You know, the disease of addiction is no joke. But I thank God that at some point, I think what happened was I had lost the job, right? So I'm in arbitration with them about the job because I kept not showing up. The job was really in the way. Okay. I felt like I was getting ready to lose my relationship with my mom. I had already ruined my marriage with the guy who I thought was going to fix me. So I felt like I was at the end. I had no more bridges to burn. Let's go get some help. And that's how I wound up at a treatment center.
So, I'm not sure if you're a parent or not, but I'm going to ask this question that pertains to a parent.
Sure.
How did becoming a parent impact your relationship with substance?
Well, I'm not a parent. The guy that I had the relationship with when I was 13, I got pregnant by him.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, mothers did not believe in their daughters being 12 and 13 years old and raising no baby, a baby. They said it was a baby raising a baby. And so the influence was to get an abortion. And she called in the big guns. My mother called in the big guns. I told you she had 10 brothers and sisters, so my uncle came over. And, he shared with me how, you need to go get an abortion. Your behavior is out of control, ... And that's what happened. I didn't feel like I had too much say-so in it. I really still didn't understand. Even though I was grown enough to do what I was doing, I didn't understand the impact of it all and how much it was going to cost me later.
And can you expand upon that, like the impact of it, and what did it cost you?
Because of how active I was sexually after I had the abortion, there were a couple of times when I was hanging out with some people I shouldn't have been hanging out with. And a couple of times I was raped. A couple of times I was just so very active. I stayed at the clinic getting shots because I was active. And that led to different pelvic inflammatory disease, yeast infections, and those kinds of things that affected my chances for having another pregnancy. And so as a result of that, I got a PID case so bad when I was 22 that I had to have a hysterectomy. 23.
Now, can you define PI?
Pelvic inflammatory disease.
Oh, you did say that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. And was that a recommendation from your doctor, or that's something you chose to independently?
I didn't have any choice. The hospital tried to treat me with antibiotics. But over 2 or 3 days, they weren't getting the results they needed. So the hospital decided, the doctors decided to go ahead. They said, well, we're going to do some surgery. We're not sure what we're going to do once we get in there, but this is what we're going to do. And so they went in, and when I woke up, it was a hysterectomy. They left my cervix. So now when I said previously, when I was sharing that 22 was a big breaking point for me, that's what I was referring to, the time when I had the hysterectomy and how that devastated me. Different trauma along the road of trying to become a woman. Yeah.
What role did a peer coaching or a mentor play in your recovery journey?
Well, I'm currently a peer now. I'm a certified recovery specialist.
Okay.
Certified peer recovery specialist, CPRS.
Okay.
And this is a second occupation for me, a second career. I worked for 29 years for a transportation company in Philadelphia, and God blessed me with that job. Had I not started my recovery journey, I would not have been able to get or keep that job for 29 years. So I'm thankful for that. So I'm a retired person.
Okay.
And so being involved in the peer recovery field with clients and residents who, like myself, means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
I share my passion with the women and my experience, and things happen. God, he allows me to touch, and they touch. Spirits are touched, by sharing your experience.
Okay. Can you share a specific strategy that has been particularly effective for you in maintaining sobriety?
A particular strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Particular strategy in maintaining my sobriety is knowing that there's no cure for this disease. And I don't care how long I've been clean, I will still always need guidance.
Okay. How do you communicate with your family about your past with your substance use?
Hmm. That's a odd question in that a lot of my family are not old enough to remember my drug use, especially my nieces and nephews, certainly the grandkids. Um, I'm in my second marriage. We've been married for 23 years. He has 3 children, and their children have children. So none of them know anything about my active addiction. But what was the question again? Did I hit it? Did I answer it?
Yeah, so I was just asking, how do you communicate with your family about your past experiences with alcohol or substance abuse? So, have anybody in your family ever been curious as to why you're enjoying the work that you do?
Well, I want to say it hasn't necessarily been curiosity. At some point, it was jealousy. When I first got clean, my brothers didn't like it that I wouldn't continue to drink with them. But yeah, some of my family, nieces and nephews, asked me, well, why is your base of friendship with women so large? Why do you keep going to the meetings? We see how it's helped you, but we recognize why is it that you can't have a drink every now and then? And then I share with them, listen, you may not have known this part, but if I have that drink, I'm not going to stop at that drink. I am not stopping at that drink. And it's going to be bad. You don't want to see that person. So I share that with them.
What are some of the misconceptions you've encountered about substance use that you'd like to address?
Misconceptions that I would like to address. I think right now, particularly now and this time, that substance abuse and the medical field is you have to be careful as a recovering person, as a client, as a resident. I would like to see the medical field be more conscientious about how quickly they are to prescribe sleeping medication, nervousness medication. I'm not saying that I'm a doctor, but what I am is an addict. And so the addict person in me would go to a doctor and say, oh, I can't sleep because I still really want to use. And so there's a disconnect there in the field, and abuse is still going on. And money, I want to say, money is still being made. It's a business first. Recovery is a business first. And them doctors want their share of that money. That bothers me. Yeah.
What advice would you give to other people who are currently struggling with substance abuse?
Well, what I know from my experience is that it gets worse. If I go back out to there tomorrow, I didn't use a needle, but if I go back out to there tomorrow, I could wind up using a needle. I don't know if anyone has heard of Kensington, being Allegheny, all the way down there in Philly, how it's really bad on the streets. I could wind up there. The progression of the disease of addiction. You think you have it, you think you're in control, but you're not.
Looking back, what would you say have been the most rewarding aspect of your journey in recovery?
recovery itself. Because in the recovery process, I have learned about my perspective and how I looked at stuff when I first got clean, and how I thought things were supposed to go a certain way, and how that mindset got me into recovery. How I looked at stuff is what got me into recovery. So since I've been in recovery, I've been able to address that mindset, and it has been changing along the way. My priorities have changed, my outlook. I want to say that, not my goals, but how my character has changed. The things that weren't important to me before have changed. It's like a full circle change. So I no longer go to bars, I don't hang out at clubs. The people that's in my life that I hang out and socialize with, they don't drink. They don't smoke. I'm not around that. And so as a result of that, it made me a productive member of society. I'm no longer out to harm anyone in your life. Like your dad, your uncle, your grandpa. Right? So that makes me productive. So, and getting a job and being able to keep it. When they ask for a clean urine, if I keep using, I can't get that. So I'm thankful to the recovery process. Ever so thankful. So many ways. Made me a friend to myself. You know, for so long I was on a journey to hurt myself, disrespect myself, devalue. That was the word I was looking for. Devalue myself. No direction. For so long, until I got into recovery, was that changed. And I come to find out I am worth it. I do matter. That I can love and be loved. And I can learn how to love myself. It takes a minute. You just don't come and talk about, oh, I love me. Nope. It takes a minute, takes effort, takes action. And how is that action done? By how I treat myself, health, exercise, meetings, recovery, all of those things help play a part in who I have become and who I'm yet to become. I'm thankful for this process. Really, really thankful for this process.
Can you share how finding treatment in Delaware as a woman and POC was for you?
Well, the problem with that question is I had treatment in Philadelphia.
Okay. Okay. Was it difficult in Philadelphia?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I went to a 21-day program, and you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you look.
I went to a 21-day program, and my insurance only covered like 20 days or 19 days, whatever it was short, and I panicked. And they used to tell us in the rehab, oh, all y'all are not going to make it. Only 3 people out of 20 is going to make it. And I would say to myself, D, you're going to be one of them. But when they told me that the insurance wasn't going to cover a couple more days, and I was scared to death about being back out on the street again. I panicked, and they got a couple days, but I still had to go. I still had to get on the street, go back to people, places, and things, go back to where I lived. Hello. Going back to where I lived. And I did that, but when I got out, I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay clean and stop using. So I went and found a friend that I used to use with, and I asked her, I said, yo, you ready to pick back up where we left off at? She was like, girl, I can't do that with you no more. I had a heart attack. I said, oh, I'm at the wrong house. no compassion for the woman. But the disease said, oh, you at the wrong house. But after I came out, I think I stayed out for like about 6 days. I smoked some weed. And then I started on the recovery process. I made my first meeting. And in that meeting, some women shared some really raw stuff. And I said, girl, you right where you supposed to be. And I've been making meetings ever since.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you just, kind of describe a little bit about your living situation during that time? Because you said you had to go discharge and you had to go back home.
Right, I had to go back home. Okay.
How was home?
How was home? I was still with my first husband.
Okay.
And he used alcohol. And I think he had some in the house, but I didn't use it. I went to the meetings. I was determined I was going to go to the meetings and get recovery. I was so determined that I didn't know at the time that I was still required to have some kind of balance. That was still my husband. Oh, God. And I had no idea what balance meant. Absolutely none. So I disregarded the marriage. I had done damage to the marriage through active addiction. And we eventually parted. And I got my own place. And I met this woman at another fellowship. And she helped me get a job at the airport. And that was the first job that I had gotten and kept for a minute.
This is going to be the final question for me anyway. Where is it? Oh, if you could wave a magic wand, what's one of the things you would want to be different?
I would want to have my child. Mm-hmm. I got something I want to share. When I was younger, I thought that I was invincible. I thought that my body was the be-all to end-all. I was hairy, and I loved being hairy. I thought that was so sexy. Oh my gosh, I had hair on my legs. And I thought that I lived in that moment for so long of who I found value, or what part of myself I found value in. And that was the physical aspect. But the older people would tell me, this is not going to last, boo. It's not going to last. And so when things changed and the disease took over, and by the time I came into recovery, I was so small. I was sunk in. And I still thought I was cute. So I say that to say that my value was in my womanhood, and I now know, and I've known for some years now, and I'm thankful for that information, the freedom, that it's not just that, it's so much more than that I have to offer to myself and others. Yep. It's not just what's between your legs, ladies. It's more than that. Yep.
Can I ask one more question since you went there? So when in your addiction, while you was being promiscuous with these individuals, did you protect yourself?
No. I was wild. Protect myself. No, I had no value of self. So why would it be a concern to protect myself? I did a lot of things in a lot of different places with a lot of different people. And going to nightclubs, staying out till 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, missing for days. That started at like 16. You know, I emotionally blackmailed my mom. I ran away from home. I was 16. And she says, well, you know, whatever you want, come back home. I said, God, I knew I could go back home and do whatever I want to do. And that was not good. Yeah. Harm. Talking about harm caused along the way to different people. Yeah. But you know, through God's grace, I've been able to amend that harm because both my parents got a chance to see me clean. Whew, girl, that means the world to me.